started. I'm sure a few more folks will trickle in as we're going, but I thought we'd kick it off for respect for your guys' time and start on time. I'm Mike Slattery. I'm the state representative here in the area. Our district is Mission, Western Roland Park, and Northern Overland Park. This is my second term in the legislature, and yeah, so far it's been exciting.
Democrats that return.
The only one who does it. So, first, I want to recognize one of my friends and former colleagues, Gene Reardon. Gene served the 19th district, 16th district in the House for the last 4 years, and rough years for Democrats. But Gene is, was great and terrific public servant, and I just want to thank him for coming here. So, yeah, absolutely. And thank you for your service. The session started. We started on Monday. We got our swearing in, and then the governor's swearing in, and then our swearing in. And the start of the session is kind of it's an awkward thing because we have 36 freshmen this year, and everybody's real excited to get stuff done and influence the state, and yet the procedure just takes such a long time to get things going, and so you kind of feel like you're running through jello, so to speak, and so. And we're kind of going through a little bit of that, but some of the things that do happen right off the bat is committee assignments. For me, my committee assignments are on energy and utilities again, and then on the ranking minority member on economic development and commerce, which I'm really excited about. The economic and development and commerce committee is a combination of 3 committees. It was labor, commerce, and then economic development. Those all got rolled into one committee over the last couple of years. And so, yeah, pretty excited about that. That can kind of encompass any and every issue, it seems like. And then apart from that, I'm on the Joint Committee for Economic Development, so that's a committee with the senators and the House of Representatives members. So with that, the last few things that have happened in the last week, let me take time out and just pause for a second. The way that I typically run the House meeting or town hall meetings is I'll give you guys kind of a brief update of what's happened in the past and then what's kind of the outlook for the future. And then at any point, if you have a question or anything, feel free to interject, but there's always time at the end for lots of question and answers. I'm here until 11:30 when my kids run out of daycare allotment. So other than that, I'm all yours. But so feel free to interject at any point, but know that there is that time at the end. The State of the State was Wednesday, and that was the opportunity for Governor Brownback to get up and kind of give his first formal presentation to the state, both to the legislature and to the state on the whole. This is his opportunity to kind of lay out his goals and kind of objectives over the next few years and over the next session. And he laid out a roadmap that was, in some ways very detailed, in other ways more general, and that's kind of par for the course for state of states. If you've ever seen the State of the Union, you understand that a lot of it is, kind of building up the enthusiasm of the state, and then there's a few key specific points that they try to, make pretty clear. Governor Brownback mentioned some of the things in his budget that came out the day after, but in the State of the State, he mentioned, the economy, jobs, schools, and then just kind of social issues on the, in general. He spent a lot of time talking about the economy and ways that he's planning on trying to spur the economy on through some job creation ideas, as well as trying to generate new jobs and lure businesses into Kansas, particularly into underdeveloped areas or areas where you're seeing a double-digit population decline. He's calling these rural opportunity zones, or ROSEs. And so the idea is in the 40 counties where we've seen 10% or more population decline over the last 10 years, it would be an effort to try to bring people there into those counties through tax incentives. On top of that, he talks a lot about education and education funding. Obviously, we're at a $500 million budgetary deficit for 2012, fiscal year 2012. And so that $500 million hole is primarily caused by stimulus funds that we've been receiving from the federal government. We have been using those quicker than it was originally intended. We've been using them to backfill some of the recession that we had the last year, but that's $492 million we had from federal stimulus funds that we're using in education is now gone. And so we're trying to fill that hole. And what Governor Brownback has stated he's going to do is essentially cut that $500 million out of our budget as opposed to trying to fill that in some way. At the same time, we said that we're going to increase funding in schools, and there are some interesting word games being played that we play and they play and everybody plays. And, you know, there are two pots of money in the state of Kansas. There is our state general fund, which is something that the legislature has a pretty tangible effect on, and then there's all of our funds in general. And a lot of that is federal funds that we get that we have to spend on specific things. And so when the governor says that we're going to increase state general funding towards public schools, that's true. He's increasing that by $100 million, although we're losing $500 million from the state, or from all funds in general. And so it's kind of one of these little goofy word games where even though he can say, I'm increasing funding towards schools, the reality is schools are taking a hit. So that was the state of the state. It was, you know, it's great to hear kind of the enthusiasm that we can expect from the governor and from the new representatives, and there are a lot of things that we're going to be able to partner together on to push our state forward. We touched on the budget briefly, and I'm going to kind of push that back. I've got, the governor released his budget on Thursday, and we have pretty good details of what that's going to entail. And I'll kind of walk through that here in a minute. But one of the first things that kind of needs to be touched on prior to the budget is there have been numerous bills that have been submitted to the legislature to repeal the 1-cent sales tax that was passed in 2010. A lot of the freshmen that are in Topeka ran on specifically wanting to repeal the 1-cent sales tax, and frankly, they've now been given the opportunity to put all of our money where their mouth is. And so what we're going to see is, you know, we're in a budgetary crisis with $500 million. We're $500 million in the hole, and if the 1-cent sales tax gets repealed, that $500 million hole will become an $800 million hole. And so that's just, you know, one of the realities that we're facing. That $300 million sales tax, we passed the 1-cent sales tax, and that $300 million surplus was added specifically to fund public schools. So if we take that $300 million out, then we've got an $800 million hole that we're going to have to fill. And the vast majority of that was earmarked for public schools. So this is kind of what we're looking at. So let me walk through a few of the brief items that the governor's highlighted in his budget for 2012. And this is, the way that this works is the governor will release his budget recommendation to the legislature, and then the legislature will either take those recommendations and run with it, or completely ignore it and do their own thing. Usually it's some mixture of the two, but this is what the governor has recommended for 2012. One, there's going to be a 6% increase in state general fund dollars being spent. Now again, we've lost $500 million from the federal funds that was outside of state general funding, but now he's proposing that we spend $350 million more this year, although we have a $500 million hole. There's talk about eliminating corporate tax subsidies with public schools. There's talk of cutting $232 per student per base state aid, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but what that equates to is a 7% decrease in funding for public education, K-12 education. It's about $255 million, and that's out of the 2012 budget. And then as you carry that forward into 2013, it's just about a 10% decrease on public schools is what we're looking at with the governor's budget. There's the elimination of funding for public broadcasting. There's elimination of funding for mental health centers. $10 million is leaving the mental health center funding. Elimination of day and residential developmentally disabled grants. So just developmentally disabled folks, both through the mental health centers or through those grants, take a significant hit. It's the elimination of early Head Start programs in the state of Kansas. It's the reduction of Smart Start programs in Kansas. Let's see. Disaster relief, that was cut in half. So if we have a disaster in the state of Kansas, we'll have half the resources that we did in the past. And it reduces family-centered care, systems of care by half. So obviously, the way to look at a budget, essentially, is it's a declaration of priorities, is kind of the easiest way to put it. So, you know, when we all at home write out our budget, we put the things that are the most important to us first. And as we can see from the proposed budget from Governor Brownback, public schools takes a huge hit, developmentally disabled takes a huge hit. Folks that, you know, I would define as our most needy citizens are taking the brunt of this hit. That's not to say that there are things that we can do to improve this budget. I look forward to working with Governor Brownback and the leadership to try to make this budget the best budget we can. But I, for one, will not stand for cutting schools to the degree that they're proposing, cutting disabled services or services for developmentally disabled to the degree that they're proposing. I think that, you know, people keep saying, why don't you run your state like a business? Well, we're not a business. That's the problem. We're not in it for profit. We're in it to provide a set of necessary services to the people that live in this state. And frankly, in a recession, the demand for those necessary services goes up. So that's the situation that we're in. You know, the funding that we're getting has gone down because we're in a recession, but the necessity of the state services that we are to provide has gone up. Now, as somebody with 2 little kids, I have a hard time wanting to put the brunt of the economic problem on the future of my kids' education. This is kind of where I land on this, and I feel like the majority of people in this district agreed with that throughout the whole election process. But it's kind of the rosy view of the next few years, but that's kind of where we're at. And again, I look forward to working, particularly on the Economic Development Committee, to find ways to kind of get our economy kick-started back in the right direction, and to work with the governor on ways that I think we can improve both his budget and improve the layout of the state. You know, but again, there's a line that many of us won't be willing to cross. So from here, that's kind of my general outlook, but I'd love to answer questions as you guys have them. So feel free to shoot. Yes, sir.
I agree 100% cutting the education budget. That area of our economy consumes what, 2/3 of our state budget?
K-12 education is 53%.
53 now? Okay, so over half the budget goes there. I don't think that anybody that's consuming half of the state budget has the right to expect to be immune from any budget cuts that we have because of austerity programs.
Sure. And public schools have taken a significant cut over the last 2 years. They've taken a 6% cut in 2010, and in 2011 we were able to keep them harmless throughout the budgetary process. The problem is the courts, the Supreme Court of Kansas has required us to uphold a certain adequate level of education. And our Constitution requires that we provide an adequate education for all kids throughout the state of Kansas. And the Supreme Court defined what that funding level was, and frankly, we're about 10% below that funding level as is. And so we're not meeting our constitutional requirements right now as defined by the Supreme Court of Kansas.
Problem with the Supreme Court, they have no right to do that. They were legislating, they were not adjudicating. So I think they were out of line there. Unfortunately, the legislature at that time didn't have the backbone to stand up to it.
Well, the issue is that it was a broad definition of what is an adequate level of education. That's the way it is in our Constitution. And so then they had to determine through a lawsuit, essentially, that went through the courts, what an adequate form of education was. And then until something is defined, somebody's going to define it. It lands in the Supreme Court. There's a lot of sticky situations to do. So, and they were legislating by default, essentially. So we define what that is, somebody's got to, and they had to. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, if they're not going to provide an adequate level of education, then you guys need to legislate to allow the counties to be able to fund the schools to a proper level. Now, I don't care if you just say Johnson County Clark area. They can only add 3%. Now in western Kansas, they can add 10% to raise it up. But they need to be able to add some. If the state is going to say you can't add anything and we're going to take care of it, oh, we're not going to take care of it. Okay, then let them provide their own level of education.
So right now, what that is kind of relating to is local option budget. I'll just give kind of a brief overview of what local option budget is. Local option budget is, it gives local authorities the ability to raise their property taxes to pay for education. In Johnson County, we have to raise our mill. I think it's one mill gets us $3.5 million. Is that right, Gene? It's roughly around $3.5 million for one mill of an increase in property values. The problem is in western Kansas, they have to raise it 10 to 50 mills to get that same benefit. And so state requires an even playing field for education. And so what that turns into, unfortunately for us in Johnson County, is we end up paying a significant portion of the education's funding for Western Kansas. Every dollar we send to the state, we only get about 60% of it back. Now there's a certain percentage of that that's obviously fair. We have a lot more resources than they do. However, it's kind of out of whack right now, in my opinion. Now the issue is, we have maxed out the state allows local authority to raise 31% LOB or local option budget funding off of what the state gives us. So if the state gives us $1 million, we're allowed to raise 31% of that locally. We are at the cap. We have maxed out our ability to raise funds locally, whereas I think we're one of two counties that has actually done that. Most school districts do not fulfill their LOB cap because they don't have the resources to do it, or they have to raise their property values so high to fulfill that local option budget cap that we pretty much, drive their property values through the roof, or drive their property taxes through the roof. So that's again one of these sticky situations where in Johnson County, if we raise the local option budget authority through the roof, we'd be happy because we'd be able to fund our schools and not worry about having to give money to the state and then having them trickle it back to us and take 40% of it at the same time. So local option budget authority is great for Johnson County, but it's usually not great for more poor school districts. So the question again is, what's the fair level for equalized funding for schools? So it's a complicated issue. Yes, sir.
Okay, Mike Kiegerl is a legislator like you, and this past April he sent a letter to the Overland Park Senate, and he makes about 4 or 5 points about school funding. And could I get your reaction to what he says here?
Sure.
Okay, he says the state of Kansas has 295 school districts. Recent testimony documents that by consolidation to 40 districts, we would save $300 million per year.
It's a debatable point. Obviously, facts are great, but where you get your facts and how you get your facts are always disputable. Again, the concept of if that's consolidating school districts, there's not that much money to save in consolidating school districts because, frankly, a lot of superintendents play the role. Superintendent, assistant superintendent, scheduler, principal, vice principal. A lot of people play all the roles in smaller school districts. Do I think we have too many school districts in our state? Absolutely. We have way too many school districts. However, the real statement is when you consolidate schools, not school districts. That's a totally different issue. And then you're talking about busing kids an hour and a half each direction to a school, or you're talking about doing some form of tele-education, which, are we ready for that in Western Kansas? I don't know. So,
And that next,
or they do it in some areas, but they don't do it everywhere. And again, we would be talking about requiring somebody to either A, telecommute for education, or B, travel 3 hours a day in a bus. So that's what consolidating schools does. Consolidating school districts is not the golden, golden nugget that everybody.
I wonder how much how much is spent on administration, and that goes into another point he makes. He says,
Let me just tap into that real quick. Representative Keegrill's analysis is if you eliminate all administration in all of those school districts, that's what you would say. The issue, again, like we just said, is a lot of those people are wearing numerous hats. And the superintendent is also the principal of 3 different schools. So that's a situation where you can't just knock off the superintendent in one school district and have the schools operate the same way because that guy's wearing numerous hats or that gal is wearing numerous hats.
I wondered here in Johnson County with having Blue Valley and Shawnee Mission and Leyva right next to each other, I think I mentioned this last time, whether they could share some services in terms of administration. I mean, should the textbooks be different for somebody like lives across the street, like on Metcalf from one side of Metcalf to the other, and they get like in terms of food and bus, but
I've got to be careful about this because there's a city councilwoman in the room, but I think that Johnson County has a lot of opportunities for consolidating services in general. I mean, here in Northeast Johnson County, we have 7 or 8 cities within a 5 square mile radius of one another, and that becomes problematic for when you look at school districts and when you look at counties. And we have one of the highest number of government officials per person ratio out of any state in the country because we have 105 counties, 295 school districts, we have thousands of municipalities, and that probably cannot, trust me, we tried to talk about a bill in local government last year that was giving local municipalities, counties, cities, the opportunity, kind of a gentle nudge, not saying they had to do it, not saying they were forced to do it, not saying they get funding to do it, just saying you now have the opportunity to review consolidating city and county government into one system, similar to what they did in Wyandotte County. That bill died 2-9 in my committee.
Maybe not
I
take
don't understand, because the fear was they want local control. Local control was the was the beat that was, was being drummed out in that committee. But at the same time, we weren't as a state demanding that people do this. We were just saying, you have the opportunity to do this. And people felt like that was the first step in dictating to counties and cities what they had to do. So,
And I don't mean to monopolize here, but a couple of things. The money received by school boards is misused. Until 3 years ago, only 58% went to teachers, nurses, librarians, and what is required in the classroom. The rest went to a fat, entrenched bureaucracy. In 2007, the legislature required that 65% be spent on classroom expenditures. The bureaucrats are still not saving on non-instructional expenses. Currently, only 61% of spending goes into the classroom.
I don't know how it is in other counties, but in Shawnee Mission School District, 86% of the dollars that go into the school district go to the classroom. We're one of the leanest, most high-performing school districts in the state because of that. And I know that big school districts typically operate that same way. Again, this comes to the problem of some school districts have 200 kids in the school district. That's problematic. Should those school districts really be that small? I don't think so. But again, you have to talk about, it's more expensive to just get kids to a classroom in a smaller school district. If you have kids coming from all ends of the county to one school, that's just expensive. There's no way to shake that loose. So there's some ground to be had in that area. We can improve the way that school districts are spending their money, particularly in smaller school districts. But frankly, here in Johnson County, we do a very good job of spending our dollars, making sure that our dollars go to classrooms, not to, as Mr. Keeper would say, the fat bureaucrats.
And one last point from this. The unencumbered balances of unspent funds statewide were $1.4 billion at the end of the last fiscal year. Even allowing for emergencies, that is $750 million more than needed.
Yeah, no, I don't know where you came up with the concept of what's needed and what isn't needed. But again, what we've done in the legislature, and I'm embarrassed to say this, we're not exactly the most timely payers. So if you're a school district, and you and I have talked about this beforehand, if you're a school district and you're waiting for a check from the state, you don't get that check, you still have to pay your teachers, right? They can't just delay payroll payments. However, that's exactly what happens all the time. Is we're late by a week, a couple days, a month on payments to school districts, and they still have to keep their teachers paid, their administration paid, their, like you said, librarians, nurses paid. And so those funds, those emergency funds, are spent in those areas. And again, in Shawnee Mission School District, I think we have $30 million, or there's a pot of money that they have in their emergency fund. But really what it works out to be is about a month and a half of payroll. It's not $30 million, but it's something.
If you have an emergency fund, it seems like now might be an emergency. It's got, you just save it, and you don't spend it. It doesn't perform the function.
And again, every time the state is late with payments, it is an emergency. They use that money to stay afloat. So, yes, ma'am. Well, I was with you. I'll make one look at you all. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wish I knew the state of broadband delivery in Kansas, but I don't. But there's nothing magical about children and people going to buildings to be educated. And I would like to see a much greater looking at the picture from the point of how do we deliver education and what do our students need to become educated. It doesn't mean that you have to have the textbooks in the school and the library in the school, because the library is 24/7. If you want to go to county library, there's nothing that we can't do from a distance.
And we're looking into that more and more. The Energy and Utilities Committee that covers all the telecom and all the broadband-related issues, and those guys have been talking about how to get broadband out throughout the state. Frankly, this is an area where Kansas has the opportunity to really be a leader in figuring out creative ways to get kids educated. I was, high school and grade school, I was a little rambunctious, and so my only fear is thinking about me sitting at home at a computer and having to stay focused and actually learn. I think it was a difficult process for me when I was 12 and 13. But I think there are ways that we could experiment, we could try some things. And I know that Lawrence is doing this. Lawrence has kicked out a pilot program for teleeducation. And I don't know how well it's turned out yet. I don't think they've really done the whole research on how well it's turned out. It's pretty young still. But those opportunities are there. And I think if we can really figure out a way to master this, it could be huge for our state. But then we could have kids in western Kansas having the opportunity to learn Mandarin and learn languages that they would never have the opportunity to do. But
It depends on the child.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just am curious as to the relationship between state government and superintendents and school boards.
Yeah.
And if that relationship, if both parties are trying to come, or if it's more of a top-down, sorry, this is the amount that you get, figure it out, or if there's creative solutions that are coming as part of the team.
In my experience in the past is that what's happened is somebody shoots first and the other person shoots back, unfortunately. And so and to a certain degree, that's kind of the nature of the beast, where the very first thing the governor is supposed to do, regardless of who the governor is, the very first thing they do is come up with a revised budget to the current fiscal year. And again, with 53% of the budget being in education or K-12 education, that's a big pot of money. So either they're going to get more money or less money, depending on how the taxes have actually come in as compared to what we were expecting. So what will end up happening is the budget will come out and it will say blank, it will say X, and then the school districts will usually respond to that statement and say, we want to have more, or we think we should be getting less, or whatever. There should be, in an ideal world, there should be a set of school district superintendents that are coming together, that are working together, either in a county or in a region, and then talking with their delegation. We've had that in Johnson County. Our Johnson County delegation does have a pretty good relationship with our superintendents, particularly up in the Northeast. I know Gene Johnson very well, and I speak to him pretty regularly. And if he's got a problem, he'll pick up the phone and call me, and sit through and talk about a middle ground. The problem is just getting people to that table is sometimes very difficult. But I think we'll probably see more and more of that over the next few years, because unless the budget really turns around, the situation turns around in Kansas, we're going to have some pretty grim days ahead of us, and we're going to need to have people saying, this is the bare minimum of what we can actually handle. Can we figure out ways to make that budget?
Is there an education subcommittee?
There's an education budget subcommittee, yeah. And so, I'm trying to think of Larry Gordon, who's from Topeka, is the chair of that. She's new to the process, but I'm sure she'll do well at it. So yeah, there's a subcommittee that specifically handles that. It gives the opportunity for superintendents and school districts to come present what they think is fair and adequate, and see what the legislature does with those recommendations is a whole other story. Yes, ma'am.
This is I think, budget neutral question, if yours are in education. But Kansas is one of the few states that does not have a commission on the state agreement. And being a former chair of the great state of Oklahoma, commission of the states willing, is there any room, and I understand it may not hit your committees, but you may be able to get the advice on the take it, that it can be a budget neutral thing whereby, well, nothing's exactly
money that we have spent out of pocket increases as the state reduces the money they give our districts, so that's just my plea.
Sales tax exemption is on the chopping block this year as well. I've been told that $95 million in sales tax exemption will get removed this year as part of the governor's budget suggestions. Just as a word of caution on the budget on sales tax exemptions, there are $4.3 billion in sales tax exemptions on the books. $3 billion of them is federally required to prevent situations where if I'm an aluminum producer and I'm selling sheet aluminum to Wayne so that he can make cans to then sell them to Coca-Cola and turn those into, pop cans. I don't sell him my sheet aluminum with tax on it. He doesn't sell the cans to Coca-Cola with tax on it. That's one of those exemptions to prevent taxing it all the way through the food chain so that the end consumer ends up paying a significant chunk of additional tax on something. But there's $1.3 billion of sales tax exemptions that are on the book that we could easily change. Out of that $1.3 billion, the two biggest are utilities and services. Services are anything from going to the barber shop, going to your mechanic if they do something, if they tax the materials but not the services. It would include architectural fees, engineering fees. So we have a lot of architectural and engineering firms in Johnson County, and they claim that they're here because of that sales tax exemption. Again, this is one of these things where there are big ramifications to changing those things. However, we have a significant number of sales tax exemptions on the books that are ridiculous. If you have the Mission, let's say there's a Mission Lions Club, they may have a sales tax exemption, but the Overland Park Lions Club may not. Why? Because one asked for it, the other didn't. The same thing with, everything. Elks clubs, Rotary clubs, different groups have different sales tax exemptions, and there's no formula to why it is that way. It's just who asked for it and who had a better relationship with their representatives. So there needs to be a cleaning up of that process. I asked the chairman of the tax committee whether they're going to do that this year. Said, I will not hear that bill. We went through all that last year. We didn't get anywhere on that, and I'm not interested in having a systematic cleanup of this. We might look at it in 2012. So it's ridiculous, but kind of is the way it is as of right now. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not against what you said, but I used to teach, and I hope you put in for your $250.
Oh, yeah, but it doesn't even come close to covering.
Oh, I know, but still.
And thank you.
My question was, since you're on the Energy Committee, what's being done to encourage the inclusion of standards of solar power in new buildings?
We are talking about, we had a presentation from AIA, which is the American Institute of Architects, I believe is what it is. And they are talking about other states that have come up with requirements or guidelines for new buildings, whether it be state buildings or whether it be all buildings that fit under certain energy performance standards or general building practices. A lot of them follow the LEED standards, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's kind of a green building standard. They would require a certain number of points to be met. Different state standards like that, whether it be, again, in state buildings or all buildings in the state. Just knowing the makeup of the committee and the legislature this year probably won't happen. We talked about it last year, and it didn't get out of the committee. And that was for school buildings alone. And people that voted against school funding, 9 times out of 10 voted against that because they didn't like the state telling people what to do. So this is probably isn't the year that would happen, but that's something that I'm in the construction industry when I'm not in Topeka. I'm fascinated to see what we could do just through kind of providing guidelines for clean, green
So
buildings.
is private industry trying to work on this themselves? They aren't in government.
There's a lot of movement, yeah. Again, in the construction world, I've seen businesses just naturally want to do what's right, or want to build cleaner buildings and more healthy buildings. The term healthy building sounds kind of weird, but buildings, the more light that somebody's able to see from their desk, there's performance standards that show that they have less sick days, and it's interesting to see what you can do to help somebody stay healthy by just changing the environment that they work in pretty small ways. And industry's picked up on this, and and they're moving in that direction without anybody really telling them to move in that direction. So it's been encouraging. However, the only bad thing is the recession, fewer people are building new office buildings. But once it turns around, I would be pretty surprised if green buildings were more of the norm than in the past. Yes, sir.
I'm interested from what you'll have on economic development as you look at the state, where improvements have to happen to help fix the budget. For example, corn traded up the limit. Grain prices are very high, and you think with as much agriculture as we have, that hey, the budget might be looking kind of sweet. But given how the government works, our tax structure, revenue structure, we may not translate those gains in the economy into something that helps the budget. So, what has to happen economically for the state of Kansas to help the budget change, and is it realistic to get kind of a new norm?
The governor has challenged the legislature to do a total tax review. Our tax code, essentially, what he wants to do is scrap it all and start from scratch. And that provides an opportunity, like you said, to change the way that our economy behaves. Because right now, we have a very diversified economy. However, our tax code doesn't necessarily reflect that diversified economy. We have a lot of manufacturing. Agriculture is huge. I just found out that we're the second highest producer of beef in the country. That doesn't mean necessarily that we grow that, but we bring them in and process them in Kansas. So we have huge agriculture and livestock production, manufacturing. Even though we've taken some hits in Wichita, we're still pretty high in manufacturing. Some, specifically in some areas. Biohealth is another huge thing for the state of Kansas. But again, our tax structure is not necessarily designed to reflect that diversified economy. I think Governor Brownback's request that we review our tax structure is good. We need to do that every once in a while to just make sure that we're trying to incentivize the right things. And a lot of the things on our tax codes are extremely old and outdated, and that could help, do exactly what you're saying. Our tax receipts are going up. That's a good thing. We've seen that they're higher than expected, and that's good news for us. So we'll see how that carries forward. Yes, sir.
Do you see changes in the public broadcasting that you're talking about? Is that going to affect TV?
It will affect, yes. Long story short, yes. Any public broadcasting, both television and radio that is located in the state of Kansas will be losing funding. KCUR will not because they're in Missouri, but KDR will. So public radio listener like myself or NPR radio listener, you've probably already heard that they make advertisements all the time about 112 Congress potentially cutting funding from public radio, and that's something that we're doing in the state of Kansas now. So
you're doing that there.
I'm not happy about it.
How would it continue to escalate? Lower salaries or resources?
Lower salaries, reduction in expenditures. We'll have to try to start selling more advertising blocks. I mean, it's going to be. It'll probably change. It'll frankly probably change NPR or public radio and public television, like we know. So
That's scary.
yeah, my daughter loves Sesame Street. And something like that.
Neutral reporting on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So
There was a time when public radio filled a niche that was necessary because there wasn't any other place to get that kind of information. But that's all gone by the wayside. Now we've got the internet and you get the cable companies. I got two alternatives. I don't even care if you have public radio or not. It doesn't do anything for me personally and for anybody I know.
well, I like it because it's hard for me to find on the radio, particularly kind of middle of the ground, news source. You've got far left and far right guys screaming at each other 24/7. These guys, it's probably middle of the road and neutral if it's extremely boring to the ears just from turning it on. And that's what I like about all my friends have this NPR. It's too boring. Well, it's probably because they're not trying to show, sell glitz and glamour and
I've never heard of such a thing as conservative public radio. It just doesn't happen. Always liberal.
Yeah, well,
So it's always on the opposite end of the spectrum for me.
yeah, understandable. Yes, ma'am.
I come from Wichita originally. There are a lot of people down there who can't afford cable and can't afford a computer. So there's still a price for all this stuff, whether it's the person up here needs it or not. You
to say it's one person or one individual or one group. Everybody's responsible with how, in my mind, how divisive the political environment has gotten. And we as voters and as taxpayers are responsible for demanding that our public service have a good discourse and a good, even-keeled way of presenting things. We may not agree. That's the beauty of our political system is we don't have to agree. However, I feel like it's our responsibility to be respectful of one another's opinions and be respectful of the differences that make our country so strong. And that's one thing I applaud everybody that comes to my town hall meetings. I've never had anybody yell at me. I've never had anybody yell at one another. And that's huge because, frankly, the political environment right now kind of condones that. And people in this room, you've never done that. And I applaud you guys for being respectful of one another and just coming to talk. I mean, that's huge. And, you know, it's rare to see that happen. And frankly, it hasn't always been rare. My dad's in the back of the room, and he was serving in Congress in the 80s and 90s, and that's the way it was then. People were friends whether they were on totally opposite ends of the political spectrum. And just because, you know, I thought this and they thought the complete opposite didn't mean I would say that they were an SOB or, you know, they were the devil. We were able to disagree and then go get a drink later and have our kids play on the same sports team and be friends. And it's not that way now, and I hope it continues. I hope it moves back that way because, frankly, we're kind of at a tipping point of extremism on the political ends, and I'd like to see that, you know, the middle voice of America get heard again. So.
I think that discussion this week has certainly brought that to light. And
Yeah.
I think at least the more moderate parts of both sides, maybe not Sarah Palin, but the more moderate sides of the discussion line have been brought closer together.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I have a son that's in the Shawnee Mission School District. He's 9, and I'm very concerned about the whole, and I'm going back to the issue of education. I know there's shortfalls that we as a state need to correct and need to be creative in coming up with funding resources. I mean, I've heard distance learning, broadband. I guess my question is, and I heard the local options. I mean, I certainly don't want our educational system to take a hit, and I really feel that the kids are our future, and quite frankly, they'll be taking care of everyone in here at some point. How do we, with all the issues that are out there, what's going to be, or what do you see the middle ground in this whole issue of making sure that the cuts in education aren't as such where there's 32 kids to a classroom and teachers are getting laid off and our school systems are getting gutted. I mean, where's that middle ground to be responsible with state government to make sure that the shortfall is covered, however our kids are being educated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the question, if I could summarize it, is how do we make sure that we're meeting our immediate needs without destroying our long-term goals?
Right, absolutely.
And that's a terrific question. And frankly, right now, we might not have the tools to do that. I mean, we have an education formula system that essentially, particularly here in Johnson County, we've tied our hands to be able to take care of ourselves if the state isn't meeting their ends of the market, their end of the deal. And I know Governor Brownback again has expressed interest in changing the school funding formula. I don't think it will happen this year because nature of the beast, if anytime the funding formula will change, there's going to be winners and losers. And most often when you do a big school funding formula change, you hold the losers harmless for a certain amount of time. So that means that the funding formula is actually going to have more expenses for the short term until it balances out and it's fully operational, if that makes sense. Because you're going to add more money to the winners in the immediate and hold the losers harmless for a certain period of time as they adjust to the new budgets. Local option budget is a great way that Johnson County can take care of our education system. We put education at the top of the priority list. And every survey I've ever given to people in our district, they continually say that education is the #1 issue. When I was going door to door, 2010 and 2008, it was education and jobs. And in my mind, those are two extremely connected issues. You don't have good jobs in Kansas, and particularly in Johnson County, without Good schools are a huge, quality of life issue. And businesses consistently say that great school districts are one of the things that cause us to want to move in the state, particularly in Johnson County. However, you don't have good schools if you don't have the businesses to provide the tax funding for our schools. So it's a two-way street. And I hate to see schools pitted against businesses and businesses pitted against schools because that's essentially robbing Peter to pay Paul. All that said, to answer your question, the middle ground road temporarily may be increasing the local option budget authority so that local districts and counties and cities can raise their property taxes to backfill the lack of state funding while we change the system to make it more equitable so that there's, again, it has to be equalized so that people in Johnson City, Kansas, on the western border, still have as good of an education, or close to as good of an education as they can get if they live in a really great area like Johnson County. It's a delicate thing, but we need to, also here in Johnson County, if I want to pay more taxes so that my kid can have a great public education, I should have the ability to do that. Sir?
Okay. Legislative Post Audit, which is a non-political neutral agency, evidently offers school districts assistance to find cost savings. And evidently, according to Mr. Griddle, only 6 of the 295 districts have availed themselves of this service, and none of them from Johnson County. And is it possible that if the legislature authorizes an increase in the local option budget, that you could tie in a requirement that this agency go in and do an audit, not an audit, but cost savings audit, and make that public and
Okay, 2 little tidbits on this. One, we could, absolutely, but do I think that that's the best option? No, because that comment that Mr. Keeper was making is kind of loaded. There may be 6 people that have asked the state for help in doing that research for them, but that might be driven on numerous reasons. One being, the legislative post audit takes a really long time to do anything. Being a legislator, I've asked them to do a couple little things, and one, it takes 6 months sometimes for them to come back with any kind of information, and usually it's a half, it's like their rough draft. And then 2, it's essentially putting more burden on it. It's making the state spend more expenses out of the school district, figure out ways to save money. And third, a lot of school districts, particularly big school districts, know how to save money. But they've got people that are in charge of their budget department that are doing exactly that level of research. They just might not be asking the state to do it. So is there a way to encourage or require school districts to streamline their expenditures and to, make sure that they're trimming out their budget and cutting the fat out of their budget prior to receiving additional funding? Sure, I think that's common sense. However, requiring them to go through one specific agency that has a huge backlog may not necessarily be the wisest move, because that's saying that the state of Kansas will know better ways to save money for Shawnee Mission School District than Shawnee Mission School District will. So it's a good idea. The concept is good, but I don't know if the execution that you proposed was necessarily the best way to do it. However, I do like the
you said
idea.
one district saved $1 million.
That's great.
I mean,
That's terrific. That doesn't mean that it's the best way that we should require every school district to do it the exact same way. So,
Every discussion that I've been involved in about education, it seems it always ends up about money. If money is really what we're after, then we need to be concentrating on what we can do to improve the economy of the state. And there's a couple of areas where we have unique opportunities. One of those is in wind power, the other is in sun power. And I just wonder, is the state doing much of anything right now to address that issue?
last year we gave permission to a private entity to build a transmission line out of the state of Kansas, and it's going both north, which connects to the eastern seaboard, and then one that goes west, that connects to the western seaboard. And that, for us, was our biggest problem, was what do we do with the electricity that we've generated in our state borders, and how do we get it to the people that need it? And now this transmission line has been a huge success. In 2010, in Hutchinson, Siemens built a new wind generation turbine manufacturing plant, and that just got kicked up and is online now. I think it came on in November. That's been a huge success for us. We are incentivizing different, whether it's local municipalities or wind energy companies, to help them build in
surround us, Colorado, all of them, if you look at it, we're one of the worst. We got such high tax rates that businesses prefer to go there.
Well, it's a complicated issue. When you're talking about tax structure, I would disagree with that because we've had some huge successes of businesses literally crossing from Missouri to Kansas, specifically based on our tax structure. But your point is well received in the fact that our tax structure doesn't necessarily encourage all the right things. It's a complicated way to do that because unless we have a tax structure that is no taxes, it's hard to encourage every different industry to come. I think there are things that we can do to incentivize specific industries. And last year we passed a wind generation energy tax credit, specifically trying to generate more wind energy business in the state of Kansas. Do we have a tax credit that benefits all businesses? No, but I would definitely disagree with the comment that we have one of the worst tax structures for businesses. I mean, Cerner, U.S. Bank, and these guys have made huge investments in the state of Kansas, brought thousands of jobs over here in the last year, specifically because of our tax structure. But I think there is always room for improvement.
Is the tax or the budget available anywhere online that we can look at?
The governor's budget was just released. I don't know if it's been made public on the website. I don't think it's been introduced as a bill yet technically, and so I don't think therefore that it's necessarily made public unless it's on the governor's website. To be completely honest, I haven't gone there and looked at it. It's a 900-page document, so if you're interested, I've got CDs of it that I could probably get a copy of and mail them to you if you're interested, and we can get a little sign up down here at the end that you can write if you're interested in it. But it's interesting. It's got kind of a summary of what he's doing in the actual statute language, which is, if you can understand it, God bless you. So.
The other question I have is, what are we doing as government to entice individuals and businesses to come up with some of these creative ideas, or are you guys trying to do it kind of in the back?
That's a loaded question.
Sorry.
No, that's fair. The governor has actually he's formulated an economic policy committee, which has it has the chair, or it's the Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Revenue, Agriculture. I don't remember what the fourth is, but there are 4 secretaries from the cabinet, as well as 9 private business CEOs that are coming together to discuss exactly that. So that's in my mind, it's a great success and a great move by the governor to kind of move in that direction, and we'll see what they come up with and frankly how quickly they come up with it, because quality and speed are 2 things we definitely need these days.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
I don't really know what I want your response to be, but I think that I'm very concerned. One example in particular is that the Kansas Arts Commission in this new budget will be downgraded to a nonprofit, and they will then be ineligible to get any federal funding, federal grants, which then they pass on to the arts organizations within the state. And it seems to me that that's kind of a backward step. You're eliminating a revenue stream. Not you, I'm sorry. The new budget would actually, it's a short-term gain. And I don't even know if it's a short-term gain because I'm not sure exactly the funding that the feds put in. But it eliminates the opportunity to get additional revenues. And you can also say arts and culture are economic development in and of themselves. So what I feel though, and that's probably the same with several of these cuts, at what point will we stop being in reactionary mode and cut to try to make this fit, and then transition into visionary to where what kind of a state do we want to be and how do we get there? And I just feel that right now, I don't feel that it's noble to be in this reactionary cut mode. I think it's actually short-sighted. And I think that this is a unique opportunity because this might be our new reality. You know, everybody thinks, well, we need to drain our emergency funds. Well, what happens when that goes away? I mean, this might be the new reality. And so I feel that we need to kind of maybe just adopt this as what we're going to be looking at going forward and figure out how to make it work long term. And then additionally, I understand taxes are kind of a 4-letter word, but having a successful state budget where we don't have to make all of these. I think that we need to be smarter with the way that we're funding things. I think that this is an opportunity for us to kind of audit the way that we're spending money. However, what does it cost each taxpayer annually to get to where we need to be? And so I guess has there been any studies on $3 a year, more for the average taxpayer, or is there just such a reluctance not to raise any taxes that this is what we're creating for ourselves?
The deficit that we have is about $500 million, and the population, if you break that out, is roughly, this is rough, but it's like $200 per person essentially would be what it would be for us to all chip in to get that back to zero. In relation to the arts issue, governors across the board, the legislature across the board, does things temporarily, with kind of the short-sighted effects in mind that have long-term effects and unintentional in some ways. And I think that the Arts Commission is one of these things where, again, we may be saving ourselves $1 million, but from our state fund, but that may mean we're losing $5 million from the feds. Now, that's then a $6 million hit to arts in the state of Kansas. And do we want to do that? Some people say yes, some people say no. But that's one of these situations where you're right. You bring a great point up. What we do in the state has significant impacts to the amount of funding that we're getting from the federal government. And yeah, it's a delicate dance. How do we solve our budget problems without doing long-term effects to specific things? And the governor, through his budget, has shown that arts is not one of his top priorities, and that's his priority statement. The problem I see is if he's not willing to, if they're going to eliminate if the 1 cent sales tax gets eliminated, and the governor decides that we're going to cut our way out of this budget problem, then there aren't too many things that won't get cut, frankly. And so, he's trimming off, in his mind, the low-hanging fruit. And, I think that art has a huge economic development, and it stimulates the mind. It's great art is important to everybody, and that's why we teach it in our schools from, early ages, kindergarten, preschool. But, yeah, the governor said that that's not his priority. Did I get both of your questions?
I didn't know if they had any, but I do know specifically about the funding. It makes us ineligible for federal funding, and I can only imagine that that's not the only cut that's going to have double, triple the effect monetarily.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's $5 million, and that's $5 million, $6 million reduction rather than $1 million. And to me, that's not good financial decision.
Well, developmentally disabled services have,
Well,
I think they have a 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 match from the federal government. So if we cut $10 million or $15 million out of DD funding, well, that really equates to $45 million, which is huge. We've already got a significant waiting list. So, yes, ma'am.
I agree with my own opinion and many of the others. But setting aside everything we said, out-of-work people whose houses have been foreclosed don't pay taxes. What can we do to encourage more jobs and more income? And then it wouldn't really matter if we lowered money, if we had more money coming in taxes.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter if we lowered the rate of taxes, just so we had more money.
Yeah.
So what are we doing to encourage jobs?
Jobs is the #1 issue that we're going to face in the state of Kansas. We, like I tried to, kick around or, I alluded to, jobs in schools, schools and education is your #1 priority. It's extremely connected to the job performance and the unemployment levels in the state of Kansas. Things that we can do to drive job growth, it comes from, one, economic development. The governor's idea of trying to lure people into low population centers throughout the state of Kansas to try to generate economic development in those areas is a great idea. A lot of communities throughout Kansas are state. I mean, you want to talk about, just like you mentioned, you want to talk about the easiest way to get a business into Kansas is to not lose a business that's in Kansas. And so coming up with a formula that applies to all businesses, so it's not winners and losers, it's, you know, if you're a business X and you're doing the exact same thing as business Y, you guys both get the same benefits for being in our state. Things like that where, you know, if you work in the state of Kansas, you know what your incentive package is going to be. I think that provides some stability for jobs here in the state. And then part of it is, you know, it's the unfortunate reality that we're just, you know, we're going to do what we can to be smart for the short term to get us in a position to bounce out of this, you know, economic situation that we're in the quickest. And there's so much that we can do, and there's some that we can't, and we just need to position ourselves again to respond when the things that we can't do change in our favor.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, one thing you didn't mention is the transportation plan that we passed last year.
Yeah.
Because that is going to add 175,000 jobs over the next 10 years. And there's also a provision of that dealing with the development of the railroad intermodal out in Gardner, which should spur tremendous growth in warehousing activity and associated jobs with that. So there are things like that that we already have done in the past. We are in the worst, as you probably know, the worst recession since the Great Depression, and that is a nationwide problem. But Kansas is dealing with that to some extent. I mean, it's not completely solved, obviously.
Yeah, and then NBAP's another thing that, you know, the National Agricultural Defense, did I get it right? Is that defense facility? That is another thing that's been on the books for a long time. We're starting to break ground. It's starting to get built. When that gets built, it's going to be a huge economic development center for the state of Kansas. So there are things that are in the works. It's just, you know, it's taking its time to get to completion. So we probably got time for about 2 or 3 more questions. So who's got something pressing that hasn't been covered? Yes, ma'am.
You know, I was just wondering if the state's going to be at $500 million down, and the cities get special funding, and a lot of that's been cut out over the years with the anti-causes, but the special highway hasn't, and neither has the alcohol money, it's just for 2 of them. But if those get cut out, which they stand a good chance of getting cut out, they probably will because the state needs to make it up, then we're going to end up paying money anyway because our cities and counties are going to be locking these things.
Absolutely.
I think they're still in the budget right now.
Yeah, it is right now. But again, that's one of those pots of money that we can feel good about ourselves if we make cities raise taxes and we don't have to.
That's right.
And so the 2 city councilmen, I'm sure,
What I was going to say.
throw some daggers at the way that we've treated cities in the last few years. But yeah, that's it. It's in my mind, it's not fair. We've made promises to cities saying you're going to get X amount of funding from us, and then you guys start behaving as if you're going to get that funding. And then we said, gotcha. We take that money back because our problems, you know, we think are more important than yours. And it's unfair, but it's exactly what we're doing.
And another issue is what you brought up earlier. I have been in meetings where they discussed consolidation, which they said is a bad word. You know, we should call it collaboration. And for this city,
Sharing of services.
yes, and I think this city is working towards that.
Good. That's great. I think that, you know, if I could lay out a picture of how I think Northeast Johnson County would look, probably 2 or 3 cities.
Well, we don't need everybody to have their own police department. We don't probably need every city to have their own public works department.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we can collaborate on. Some cities are better at some, and some are better than others.
Absolutely. And I work for JD.
And that is a discussion.
Good. Well, that's great to hear. I work for JD Construction, so I like when everybody wants to build their own police station. At the same time, I don't know if it's necessarily the wisest use of you know, city funds and individual taxpayers' funds. However, I want to give a kudos to the mission. You guys did a great job with Countryside. I mean, that was an issue with people of Countryside realized that their property taxes would go down if they joined with the mission. They did. It went down, and you know, the mayor of Countryside, you know, had the lack of political ego to recognize that
especially in the days of the old-time mayors. You know, the mayor panels that have been here for 30 years. The mayorship, the fiefdoms would be gone if they collaborated.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that's so much now.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
No, like, the topic of tax structure and reforming the tax structure has come up with several questions. And I'm wondering now, we have a lot of new people going to Topeka, a lot of them are fair tax people. Is there going to be any movement toward putting a fair tax in place?
Yeah, I would assume that there'll be a bill that will come out that will do some fair tax, and they'll promote fair tax to one way or another. My research into fair tax, I have concerns with it on the state level. I think if it was instituted on a federal government level, it could be extremely interesting. But my understanding is that the tax has to go up on sales tax items, but a lot of other taxes go to zero or to extremely low levels, depending on what type of fair tax you institute. Here in Johnson County, I've had people call me and say that our state's going to fall apart because of the ones that sales tax increase. And if our sales tax has to go up 2 or 3% to absorb the loss of taxes in other places for fair tax, then in my mind, my fear is that it would drive business outside of the state, more so. But if it's a federal issue and our sales tax is the same as Missouri sales tax, it could be extremely interesting.
Earl Long, the president of the Fair Tax KC, has done a lot of work with the concept at the state level, and they're also working with Missouri. Missouri may get it before Kansas. I mean, they're progressing more quickly over there. I just wonder if you met with Earl and talked with him in detail about that.
Yeah, I met with him in December, well, it was the week before Christmas, and met with him and talked through it. He sent me some information. I've been reading Rich States, Poor States, and it's interesting. So, yeah, but it's,
You need to come to one of the meetings sometime.
Yeah.
I've invited you now several times.
I'll
pay for the coffee.
The only negative thing with 2 little kids is you gotta kind of pick and choose what you can and can't go to. So, any other questions? Well, again, I want to thank you guys just from the depths of my heart for the civility that we display on this road. It's amazing. We have people on different ends of the spectrum, different passions, different hot button things that they're really geared up towards, and you guys consistently just exemplify civility. I'm very proud to represent this community. I mean, it's terrific to see the way that you guys treat each other. Frankly, I like the way that you treat me. It's very nice. So I appreciate it very much.